So we're going to jump right into our next presenter. It'll be John Koch from the City of Muscatine, Water and Resource Recovery. John has been innovative on several projects there at Muscatine, so I know he's given several presentations in the past, and we're going to get caught up with him on Muscatine's organic recovery for energy project. So it's all you, John.
Morning, everybody. How's it going? Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, great. So yeah, I have presented on some of this stuff in the past, and I think everything before now was actually what we were going to do, but now we can actually say this is what we have done. So that's pretty exciting. Of course, I like to start out with this little history of wastewater treatment. When they're going to go over some of the City of Muscatine sustainability efforts, talk about what this nutrient, energy, and water, the new water nexus is, and what Muscatine calls the MARV movement. Isn't that exciting? Okay, this is the timeline of clean water healthcare. I think I called it sanitation last year. I keep moving away from that to really emphasize that what we do here is a human health issue first and foremost, with environmental benefits. I mean, I know the EPA has it in their name, the Environmental Protection Agency, but these things really started out as a human health thing to protect people from getting sick and dying. All the way back, you know, you can see the timeline there, 3500 BC, when we first start seeing some sanitation systems go up, and all the way through to the end of this, but up in the corner there, 61% of the world still lacks proper sanitation, almost 5 billion people. So really it's still a big number, it's still a big problem. But some of these things are pretty interesting as we go through. You notice that China looks like the first one to reuse biosolids, as it were, as a fertilizer. That's kind of exciting. Clear back 2500 BC. First flush toilets start showing up where people figured out to use water to move this stuff around and put it where they want it. Then, of course, the Roman sewer is right around zero. Is pretty famous for everybody to see how they brought water in and the aqueducts, but also how they flushed that stuff out into the rivers, of course, or in the ocean. And then you get to 1535, where things really started getting bad because cities started getting really big. And that was the biggest thing, is that all of a sudden people started moving out of the agricultural land and moved into these giant cities. And you had rivers like the Thames River that smelled like death. The Thames has the unfortunate acronym of, or not acronym, but the unfortunate situation and where it doesn't always flow out to the river. Sometimes it flows backwards. So you have this kind of shifting back and forth of this water, and everybody's dumping. About 1 million people dump their waste into it, and then it just sits in the middle of town and putrefies. Isn't that great? So we go all the way through to the first biological treatments about 1885. They started figuring out that they could actually treat this biologically. Our first ones in the United States about 1887. And then the things that we do today, the activated sludge systems, start seeing around 1916. And of course, you know, the IOEA was formed a long time ago, right around that area as well. And then we have several attempts anyway at getting something, a Water Pollution Control Act, which didn't really work, but it led to what became the EPA in 1972. So Terry already went over that stuff, so I'm not going to talk much about what the Clean Water Act did. But things that have come up since then, we started looking at stormwater. So around 1990s, you start seeing the first stormwater systems come in to be monitored and actually regulated. Then, of course, around 2013, Iowa adopted the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. So we started looking at how we're going to reduce nitrogen and phosphorus. And then for our part in Muscatine, 2020 kind of hits that new mark of the new nexus that we talked about, the nutrient, energy, and water, of actually bringing in some new materials to make energy at our treatment facility. So And what really drives all this is our sustainability efforts here in Muscatine. Sustainability really talks about the three big proponents of any community is people, planet, and prosperity, talking or profit sometimes they say as well. But you can always have projects that meet only one of these aspects, or maybe one or two of these aspects at the same time. But when you really are doing something in the sustainability realm, you're going to look for those projects that overlap in all three of these aspects as being really your target of how it's going to impact your community. So when Muscatine looks at projects of this magnitude, if we hit right down set in the middle, that's going to be something that we really want to look at. And of course, you know, when you talk about people, you're talking about health and education, quality of life, the planet. Obviously, we're looking at the environment and water and air quality, conserving energy, restricting land use, and recovering resources. And then, of course, prosperity. You're always looking at the economic impact for profit, employment, and property. So when we really started looking at this here in Muscatine, we talked about changing our name to better reflect what we really thought we were going to do. What our vision was to recover resources and transform water. So going back to 1965, you know, everybody called us a sewage plant. You know, I think most places got called something like that. We didn't like that name, so we changed ourselves to the wastewater plant. And then we said, well, we're not wasting water. We're actually collecting water. So we're just controlling pollution. So then we were a water pollution control systems. Now the new thing that everybody's kind of shifting to is being called a water resource recovery facilities, which Muscatine has changed almost formally. We have to go through our sewer use ordinance and change all those names now, but we'll hopefully get to that. But if you drive up to the front of the Muscatine treatment plant, the sign is out front, says Water and Resource Recovery Facility. So that's pretty formal, I think. So here's a list of some of the things that we're actually recovering when we talk about resource recovery. Say, well, what does that mean exactly? And how deep are we really going? And here's a list of the things that we've really identified that we can do through this utility to really affect our community and make it more sustainable. We have water, nutrient, wetlands, energy, organics, prairie, revenue, and then some other emerging things that are kind of exciting with the Muscatine Mussels Project. But we'll get to that here down at the end. I'm going to kind of go a little fast, help take care of some stuff that Terry talked about. We love what Terry talks about because he is full of information. The DNR has all kinds of stuff that we need to do. Mine's just kind of fun stuff. So we move along on that. So the first thing we talk about on that list is, of course, we're recovering water. This is something that a program started by WEF, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, Water Reuse Foundation, and Water Research Foundation, called the Utility of the Future today. So moving again from just being a wastewater treatment plant, water pollution control plant, whatever it is, to really moving into something bigger, really utilizing this utility to its full extent to create greater effect within our communities with this nutrient, energy, and water nexus. So nutrients, you try to recover as many as possible. The energy, you reduce or create energy as much as possible. And then, of course, with clean water, you try to reuse that as much as possible. And anytime you do that, you can actually really have a great effect on the health of your community and the environment of your community, which, of course, are very, very linked together. So Muscatine, you can actually apply for this anytime. I encourage more facilities to do that, to look at this, what the utility of the future is. You can just Google it, or you can go to wef.org, utility of the future, and you'll find some information on how to do that. It's like 9 target points. You don't have to hit them all. You can just be hitting some of them, and you can get into the program. We'll be applying for this here soon. I was kind of going to start it this year, but we had a pretty crazy year, as you'll see, with doing all these things. But I would encourage more people to go look at that. So, of course, the water that we have, we're going to try to reuse. We do have a pretty good way to do that, I think. We have a study going on right now on how we can actually take our effluent and use it for agricultural irrigation. You know, we have these really drought really bad drought periods, that the farmers would obviously like to have that water to increase yield and everything else like that. So it's a lot easier to get rid of your nutrients just by spraying it on the ground, to release that back into the plants that need it. It's a lot cheaper than a lot of some of the big capital intensive programs that we do here at the treatment plant. Yeah, it's something that we're really looking at. It seems to be a pretty expensive possibility, and on our end, it doesn't have to be expensive. I think it's just something that, looking at what we've looked at so far, there might be some issues that we have to overcome, but we really hope we can do something like that. The next thing that on the list, of course, we're going to recover nutrients. And why do we recover nitrogen and phosphorus? Well, we create most of it. If you look at the states that are colored, that is actually the size of the basin that we're talking about. All of those states influence the discharge at the mouth of the Mississippi River. You say, how can that be? The Mississippi River just runs down the middle of the country. Well, all of the rivers and everything else that comes off of all of those lands eventually ends up in this area. And so there's a pretty big watershed to look at there. But if you look at nitrogen and phosphorus and who are the greatest contributors, Iowa obviously is one of the biggest ones on both of those. So, and what does nutrients do? And we all have heard about this, of course, but for those who haven't, this is called Gulf hypoxia, or the dead zone. If you recognize down there at the bottom, the yellow and red and bluish areas is actually where the Mississippi River discharges into the Gulf of Mexico. And when it gets there full of nutrients, it actually creates an algal bloom, and then that algae dies, falls to the bottom, and the anaerobic bacteria then consume that and actually deplete the oxygen so that everything dies within it. I mean, there's the fish can't live in it, and so you have this huge area. 2020 was actually a good year. Only 2,100 square miles was dead this year, but just back in 2017 was the largest one at 8,700 square miles. It's the size of New Jersey, out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, is just basically dead. So can you imagine if you were a fisherman and that was your livelihood, and you had to take your boat out past, hundreds of miles sometimes just to find fishable waters. So the city of Muscatine has a couple of requirements in our MPDS permit that has been out now for a couple of terms. We had a report that was due last time. We did that report, or we got an extension on it, so it's in our new permit that says we have to report what our feasibility of reducing it is, how in our operations we can make that change to reach that 66 nitrogen, 75 phosphorus reduction limits or targets. And then we need to select some kind of a method to do that. One of the neat things that they've been putting in the permits lately has been that you can go up in your watershed and do this instead of making massive changes to your process, which are expensive, they're energy intensive oftentimes, or they're chemically intensive, and they have problems when you have heavier flows come through, that they can really affect how that treatment works and all that other kind of stuff. So we're looking at some of those options as well. First one, of course, we thought about was algae. If this stuff grows algae, then we need a treatment system that actually utilizes that algae, right? That's the big problem. So make the problem your solution. One of those is right here in Iowa from Ames Gross Wind Technology. Has these serpentine belts that actually you run your effluent through there, or your influent as well. You can do it on both sides. And then the belts actually dip into the water, come back up, get the sunlight, go back down, and that's how that nutrient is transferred onto the algae that attaches to the belt, and then the belt algae is scraped off. Or you can use these glass tubes that another company has. There's several options, and it's really exciting. It's a really intriguing option to have. So, and we really like it because we're really, really close on some of our numbers, and maybe it wouldn't take a whole lot for us to install something like this just to get us over the edge. The next thing that we're recovering that's related to these nutrients are wetlands. There's a lot of wetlands that have been dried out. since we've populated the state. The state used to be full of them, and now we've drained them and dried out the landscape, and it's caused a lot of problems with flooding and soil erosion and things like that, because these places would take care of that for us. It was the natural kidneys of the watershed, they used to be called. They take in that, but you can build these now and put them back into practice, which is what we're trying to do, so that you can take out sediment. You can actually then run that through so that the plants that are in there will uptake those nutrients for you. So we're looking at several locations where we can do that. One of them is in the urban sector. We do have two in this place called the Pollinator Park, which we've started a couple of years ago. The two blue areas on that map is we're going to actually be able to direct water from urban runoff upstream. About 1,400 acre urban runoff comes through that slough. If you look up at the upper right hand corner, the slough flows through, goes around the transfer station, goes out of the county, and eventually gets pumped back into the Mississippi River. So if we can pump a lot of that water, or at least some of that water, through one or both of those wetlands in the Pollinator Park, then the discharge from those should be a lot cleaner than they were when they went in. So, and it's a really neat feature. That's a picture of one of the wetlands. There's a little lighthouse in the middle there. We get geese and ducks and herons. We get all kinds of stuff there. There's a bike trail, walking trail that goes all the way around it. So it's being an urban. A lot of these things are clear out of town and nobody ever gets to see them. This one is really accessible. It's really close to a big athletic complex. So it's good for education. It's good for just getting people out into those native environments like that. The next thing we do, we're talking about energy recovery and organic recovery, has to do with this project that we started in Muscatine, or really a movement we like to call it, the Muscatine Area Resource Recovery for Vehicles and Energy. This is our food waste recovery program that we started, and have been running now since. I mean, we've been doing it for a little while, taking in liquid waste, but this really kicked off this year. With a installation of some new equipment. It follows the food recovery hierarchy that the EPA put out, and I really encourage people to kind of go take a look at some of these things, see where maybe you could fit in on how this works. But of course, we're really the fourth best option on this list. You always want to do source reduction, feeding the hungry, and feeding animals first before you just start throwing stuff into industrial collections like this. But MARV actually takes that into account. And when we start talking about food waste in our community, it really starts conversations where they hadn't been before. We try to connect people that have excess food with the people who would like to eat it first. So that's kind of, we're trying to take a holistic approach to that so that we're not just encouraging people to throw more food away. So why do we want to work this hard? Well, of course, most or a lot of plants have one of these flames for their anaerobic digesters that just burns off into the atmosphere. Freaks out people in the baseball diamonds too when they see it. They've got lots of calls about that. But we had a large manufacturer that throws about 10 tons a day into a landfill, and that sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But the more I looked around and the food manufacturers in the area, that's really not a lot. There's actually an awful lot of packaged and other kinds of waste that come out of food manufacturing, because when they're putting out, hundreds of millions of tons of food that gets out, you're expected to have a little waste, and that's just what happens. So we've tried to figure out how we're going to get that stuff, instead of going to a landfill, back into our energy program. And if you do this, I like to say you have a mandate, a grant, or a screw loose. You go to California, and the rules, the law says by 2024, 2025, something like that, that large producers, I think it's a ton a day or something like that, if you produce that much waste, you're not allowed to put it in the landfill. It's just like your discharge permit. You have a limit of how many pounds you can actually put in the landfill, just like you have a limit of pounds of waste that you can put into a river or stream. So that's coming. It's coming on the East Coast as well. A lot of that's happening. Or you can get a grant. Go to Janesville, Wisconsin. They build out this beautiful thing, had all this stuff, going on because somebody just plunked down a lot of money for that, and then nobody ever got a grant again. Have never seen any more grants like that. They kind of wanted to do one to see if, what would happen with it. So the next option you have, you just have to be crazy enough to do it, I guess. And you went to the only one I found in the area that does solid waste, packaged food waste collection like this was clear out in Hermitage, Pennsylvania. It ends up, Madison, Wisconsin has tried something like this. They really haven't gotten it up and going, but I know the Dane County landfill is trying to get things going like this. But I have looked and I have not found any other municipal system taking this approach. If you know of one, please let me know. I'd like to go visit them. Not in the Midwest, anyway, is what I'm saying. They're there. They're just very, very far away. So what we did this year. And what we've been working on is what we call MORC, the Muscatine Organics Recycling Center. And this is a beautiful machine called the T42 Turbo Separator. I just like saying that because it's really cool. And it actually takes all that packaged waste. You notice the boxes and the pallets of food over there. We're gonna cut open that. We're gonna end up cutting open that plastic and dumping those boxes and everything directly into the machine, and out the other side comes the packaging, and down from the bottom comes the food waste. It's pretty cool system, pretty neat to watch. I actually like that this thing is made in New Prague, Minnesota as well. When we looked around at other machines that did similar things like this, they were all made in Europe mostly. So I like the fact that this came right from the Midwest. It's really cool. And this is a view from the other side. So this is our old recycling center, actually. Back in the day when you had to separate out your plastics, papers, metals, glass, and they have these big bins that you drove in here and you threw your stuff out into whatever kind it was, and then when they got full, they would scoop it up and throw it in a truck, and it would go 5 different places or whatever, who was ever recycling that material. Muscatine went to commingled recycling many, many years ago, which means people, residents, and everybody can just throw everything into one bin, and somebody comes, picks it up, and then it's all shipped to Scott County Recycling Center, where it's then separated at that facility. So this building just kind of became basically a shell. Nobody was using it for anything. There's a cardboard compactor in the middle of it, but other than that, it was kind of not being utilized. So we came in, put new lights in, by the way. Those are nice new lights. There was about 3 lights that worked in this thing when we got it, cleaned it up a little bit. And then we built that wall that goes along the side of the T42. We actually constructed that as a push wall. So material is going to come in, it's going to get dumped on the floor just like that, and then we're just going to scoop that up and we're going to run it through the machine. And so you go this is all Hy-Vee food waste, so from about 6 different stores. They go around, collect that, all the produce, anything that they can't sell or goes bad or whatever, they throw in a bin, comes to us looking just like this, and it comes out looking like that. We're getting really good removal. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens most of the time where we get that kind of good removal. And we can tweak that machine by the speed, by the shape or the direction of the paddles and different things that are happening, so that we can get as much of that organic waste out. But you'll notice, from this to that is pretty good. The packaging is really clean. There's some other stuff in there still, but for the most part, we're getting all that stuff out. And hoping this is going to work to show you a little video of one of these things going. We are ready to load a piece of milk in cartons, filled in their boxes. No problem with the T42. Into the machine. Uh-oh. Before truancy, the material goes in. boxes go up this auger, comes out this chute, and is dropped into this bin for disposal. That's the only part that will actually go to landfill at this point, and hopefully we can do something with it later. Make sure I'm not muted here. Not seeing anything come back up. So, nope, not muted. Okay. So we are then taking that material to our anaerobic digester. So at the treatment facility, we have two new ones on the right-hand side here, nice floating cover digesters with side draft tube mixing. We are adding it to the food waste to those right now. They have been doing really well. They get a little foamy every once in a while. We've had a couple issues of seeing how much we can push these things with feeding them what they're not used to getting. But we do have plans to expand our digester capacity. On the left-hand side are old digester area where we had 4 square center mix digesters, which is a really bad idea, terrible way to make a digester, but it's what they had. So we're going to actually pull those mixers out and redo the interior of one of those into a plug flow digester, which is actually typically used in the ag industry, but we're going to use it for our food waste because it seems to work really well for that application. And it's the only thing we could really find that we could use the existing structures for. So it's going to save us quite a bit of money doing it that way. Otherwise, you end up building yourself a whole brand new digester somewhere out here, spending millions of dollars trying to get that done. This hopefully will be in us, and it is unique. They've said they've never really installed one in a municipality before. So we're going to be kind of the guinea pig for this technology in municipal applications. So of course, MARV stands for resource recovery, but the vehicles and energy part of this that we tacked onto the end to make the really cool acronym is vehicle fuel using compressed natural gas. So the methane that comes off of these anaerobic digesters is basically 60% natural gas. And it's just the same stuff that goes to your homes to heat water and different things like that. But when you use it as a vehicle fuel, it's actually a carbon negative fuel once you've made it through something like we're doing. So by removing the diesel and actually feeding it with compressed natural gas, you get a negative carbon credit with that because the diesel wasn't being used, but the greater part of what didn't go to the landfill as methane overtakes what the carbon emissions would be for that diesel. So you actually get a credit for that, makes it a carbon negative fuel. It's kind of cool. But what we can do is that you just inject this right into the pipeline, and then somebody can take it off no matter where they are. It doesn't matter if they're taking it off. We don't have to have a fueling station on site to do that, to get a credit for that, what they call a RIN, renewable energy credit. And then that makes this project really viable for us to be able to do, is the sale of that gas. It's pretty cool. So we're looking, there's some transport issues that we could look at as well. You can actually clean this, put it on a tanker, and then are these stacked tankers, and then deliver it to where there is an injection point as well, because these injection sites are kind of expensive to build and to maintain. So there's several different issues that we have for how we're going to use that energy. We're talking about 1,000 gallons a day. If you compare the gas to what a liquid gallon would be, it would be the comparable DGE, they call that. We're talking about 1,000 plus gallons a day being produced in Muscatine. So it's really kind of neat to see or to think about how you could actually be creating vehicle fuel out of the waste that you already had in your community anyway. And a lot of this waste, by the way, I'd say is not in our community. We only have one big food manufacturer. We're servicing 10 plus food manufacturers in the region, and they're coming from all over the place now because this is such a need in our area, really in the Midwest. There's just nobody that can do this. So we're filling a need, and people are coming from all over the place to do that. So 1,000 gallons a day, might actually be a low number. I don't know. We'll see. We're just getting started with this, like I say. So one of the last things that we're talking about recovering a resource are the prairies. We looked around at some of the things that we could do with our utility and how we could send water different places and how we take care of our land in a sustainable way. And of course, prairies, Iowa is down to about 0.1% of what it looked like pre everybody moving here and making farms out of it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're trying to put some of this back into the environment, because we've noticed that when we took away all these prairies, a lot of different things started happening, and among them is the loss of our native pollinating species, the bees and the butterflies and things like that. So we're really trying to help boost those numbers and try to get more prairie back into the systems. And there's a really big push. I see this happening all over the place now, which is really, really encouraging. It's really exciting. But you don't need a big thing to do. I mean, a pollinator park, 55 acres, wow, that sounds great. We could never do something like that. We don't have to. If you look at the lift station up front there on the top, that's just, we just stopped mowing that grass. We killed the grass, and then we put plants around the outside of it so that we don't have to, A, we don't have to mow it, and B, because it's a natural habitat now. And it's just filled with bees and butterflies all the time. So really, really looking at every place that we can do that. The Sampson lift station on the bottom, that used to just be kind of a mown grass area. Well, we turned it back into prairie. And so we're trying to dot the city with little places like this all over the place, and have little pocket prairies or whatever you want to call it. So, but the pollinator park is really our highlighted area that we really like to showcase a lot. And talking about recovering revenue, it's kind of a unique way to look at it or to think about it, but it really is. This project, the MARC project, is a net revenue for the city. We will actually bring in more money than we spend on this, which is kind of cool. It's not going to be a ton right away until we start selling the gas, but at least it's not a drag on the ratepayers. It's actually going in the positive direction. So we're really recovering something that we would have had to, the ratepayers it's always more and more expensive, of course, to run treatment facilities. So you just have to kind of keep raising rates all the time because costs always go up. So you got to charge more. Well, if you can bring in more revenue, then you're recovering revenue that you would normally have to charge back out to your ratepayers. So hopefully this will at least stabilize rates. I never promise to lower rates. Don't ever do that, because then they'll expect it. You can't always do that. But at least maybe we could stabilize those so they don't have to always go up, or they won't go up as much as we had to do before. And some of the really unique things that we're looking at in Muscatine are recovering the mussels that we lost. And this is every stream, every river, for the entire Midwest, but really the Muscatine in the Mississippi River is famous for how we just absolutely decimated the mussel population in town, because we had the pearl button industry here, which is kind of something we're famous for and infamous for, unfortunately, where we cut out holes in these shells and they make really neat pearl buttons. And we supplied, I don't know, most of the world's pearl buttons, or a large portion of it anyway, came right out of Muscatine, Iowa. And we were shipping in mussels from all those other states. So you just go in, you just scrape up all the mussels in your rivers, put them on a barge and send them to Muscatine, and we make buttons out of them. Pretty soon, you had to go further and further away from Muscatine to find anybody that had any mussels, because these things take years to grow, and we were wiping out entire colonies of them, and we really didn't think about it at the time, but these things filter water really, really well. One of these little mussels could do 15 gallons a day. If you have several billions of these in your rivers, think about the cleaning potential that you have, a passive cleaning system. I mean, you didn't have to feed them. You didn't have to put any energy into them. These things will just sit there and do that. So by returning these to our rivers and streams, we can actually make a positive effect of actually cleaning that water as it heads downstream. And finding ways to get these mussels back is really, really important to us. The Fairport Fish Hatchery was actually established to try to figure out how to bring these back, because we killed so many of them. They said, we need to figure out how to bring them back. And over the years, it's been progressing as more of a fish hatchery. But Muscatine Mussels is a group that started here, Mussel of Muscatine, to say, hey, we're going to try to figure out a way to boost these and get them back into service. And put them back into our streams so they can actually help us clean those rivers out. So that's all I have. You know, if you're thinking about doing these things, these take a lot of time. I've been working on this, really started thinking about it around 2011. About 5 good years of actual planning, designing, looking at this equipment, trying to figure out where things are going to come from. So it takes, you know, at least a good 3 to 5 years. If you have a model to follow, which I hope people do now, they can always talk to me and I'll help them figure out how to do this. But there really aren't any grants or incentives, so that would be really nice if we could start talking to our legislators and regulators and say, hey, we need some more incentive to get more people to do this, because we can really make a big impact, especially in the food waste realm. And the egg producers, of course, when we say, well, this program is voluntary for ag right now, probably be nice to say, hey, let's make some goals or some mandates to say we need to figure out how we start moving this into the ag sector, because they really are the biggest effect on the streams and rivers for nitrogen and phosphorus pollution. So we've always had waste. Let's make it work for us. And I'm done. Is there time for questions or?
Yeah, we got a couple minutes here. I have a question for you, John. Once that gas is created in the digester, do you need to clean it or anything, or is it ready to go to a truck or right to an injection point somewhere?
Yeah, it's only about, well, ours is about 66% methane. So you got a lot of other stuff in there that has to go through a cleaning process. One of the biggest things that they don't want in there is oxygen. Obviously, you're supposed to have an anaerobic process, so you shouldn't have any, but that'll kill you faster than anything else is having oxygen in there. But you're going to take out hydrogen sulfide, siloxanes. Then they make these skids that you push this gas through, cleans it all up for you, and then you have to have compressors to do whatever you want to with it after that. So we're going to have some kind of cleaning process before we can sell that gas. I am hoping somebody's going to show up with a truckload of money and say, I'll do it for you, and we'll take care of it on the back end. You just send it to us dirty and we'll take care of it, because that's the easiest way for us to do it.
Yeah, gotcha. Oh, very cool. All right, I didn't see any other questions come through, so thank you again, John, for giving us an update to this and everything you're doing there in Muscatine.